everyone, it's Barbara C. Phillips, founder of Nurse Practitioner Business Owner, and I'm here with another business question of the week. And today's question is about what kinds of practices have less overhead? What kinds of practices can I get into for less overhead and can operate on less overhead? And the actual question is, do you know what business models have less overhead and yet are still viable? Well, there's a whole lot of different ways to do this. And of course, when we talk about overhead, that just means everything that it takes first to start the business, the money to take that it takes to start the business, and then the ongoing overhead is what you are spending each and every month to operate your business. So depending on the business model and the type of business you're starting, obviously it's going to vary quite a bit. So you might think about things like your building, the brick and mortar. Where do you house your business? You're going to certainly think about staff costs, because that is generally the highest line item that you are going to be spending money on, and those kinds of things. So if you think of it that way, well, what are some of the ways that you can start a business for less? So if we think about this, we're going to be looking at very small practices, perhaps mobile practices, and perhaps virtual practices. So let's just say you want to start a small practice. Well, you can start a one-person practice with just you seeing patients. And if you do a search for ideal medical practices, you'll see this being talked about in physician groups as well as nurse practitioner groups. So an ideal medical practice is one person generally, ideally, and you do everything for that person. And so what often happens is someone will just rent an exam room in somebody else's office. So they're not having to pay all of that overhead for having their own office suite, but they're utilizing just one room. And built into that may or may not be somebody answering the phone, may or may not be somebody helping you with scheduling. But certainly if you're doing a small operation, you can do all of that kind of stuff yourself. So that's one way to get started. Who might have a room around you that they're not using either on a daily basis, or they have an extra room in their office and you can utilize that as well. So the next thing, mobile practices. Well, mobile practices don't generally have a brick and mortar office suite anyway. You're visiting patients, say in a long-term care facility, assisted living, perhaps you're doing house calls. So your overhead in this case is really going to be how you get around, your car, for instance, and what it costs you to see patients in those particular areas. Obviously, not a lot of startup costs. Do you need an office? Well, you're going to need to designate some kind of an office where you can do your paperwork and your billing and that kind of thing. You can do it out of a spare room in your home, for instance. So there's different ways that you can do this. So virtual practices, what do I mean by that? Well, look at telemedicine and telehealth. There's all kinds of ways that you can now compliantly interact with your patients and work with them that way. And of course, if you start thinking about these types of situations and you start thinking outside of the clinical arena, then of course there's a lot of different things you can do. So I hope that that's given you some ideas on how you can start a low overhead practice and maintain an overhead practices. And of course, remember, the less amount of money that you are spending in overhead, that's the more money that gets into your pocket at the end of each and every month. So if you've got questions for us, go ahead and give them to us at bit.ly/NPQuest. That is our Google form that you can submit your questions. You can also send me an email at npbo@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your ideas and comments, and you can leave them below this video here on YouTube. And thank you so very much for liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. And again, if you're looking for more information, we've been publishing our blog on nurse practitioners in business since 2007, and we also teach courses and other things over at Clinician Business Institute. So check us out over there, and I will see you next time with another business question of the week. Bye-bye now.